Hey you guys, we're going to work on concept 15 now, and which deals with proportional relationships. Moving to level 1, I want to be able to do two things here. I can tell if two ratios are proportional, and I want to be able to solve word problems using proportions. So we got to figure out what this word proportional means, and let's get started doing that. All right, put this in your WSQ. Start, underline it. What is a proportion? Well, basically a proportion is two equal ratios. That's pretty simple. So I got a couple examples for you. I got a ratio of yellow to total number of marbles. And so I got 1 yellow and 3 total. So I got yellow to total, a part whole. And again, over here, equal to 2 parts. If I double this, I got 2. And then my 2 blue turned to 4, so I have 2 yellow, 6 marbles. That's called a proportion. This relationship right here is called a proportion. Now, some of you looking and say, hey, those are equal fractions. Yeah, they're like equal fractions. So, and we kind of treat them like equal fractions. So, but we call them proportional. Okay, got another example for you. 10 out of 20. So the dimensions between the head and the back. A lot of times if we shrink a picture and we want to keep it, you've done this on the computer where you squeeze their head and it looks really awkward. We want to be able to keep the same dimensions. So what we look at is we look at proportional lengths and widths. Okay, so if the 15 on the head is proportional to 30 on the back, I want to keep those dimensions. I got to keep equal ratios. And so we say that this relationship between these two pictures is proportional. They are two equal ratios. All right, let's move on here. How do you know if a relationship is proportional? How do I know? How do I know 5 out of 20? Is that equal to 3/12? Is that a proportion? Well, it's easy. Write this in there. How do you know? We're going to start using cross products. And basically, cross products, remember, product means times. Cross products means I'm just going to multiply across on the diagonal. So to check it out, I'm going to take 20 times 3, and I'm going to take 12 times 5 right here. So 20 times 3, that's 60. And then 12 times 5 is also 60. So if those two are equal, then these two ratios are equal. And if I have two equal ratios, it's called proportional. Okay, so yes, this is a proportion, two equal ratios. Now, is there other ways to do it? Yep. Sometimes you can say, okay, what do I multiply or divide to get to 3? Sometimes you can treat them like equal fractions. Whatever you multiply on the bottom, you multiply on the top. That will work. In this case, it doesn't work too well because 3 does not go in evenly. There's another way you can do it. You can just knock this into kick it into a decimal. You can take 3 divided by 12 and get 0.25. And sometimes we want to do that. We'll talk about that later. So if I do that, I'm going to get a fourth, or 0.25. And again here, this is equal to a fourth, which is 0.25. If those are equal, then I say these two ratios are proportional. Let's look at these quick. Practice. 3 times 2. 6 times 1. Is that proportional? Yep. Is it a proportion? You betcha. 20 times 15. Well, if I take 20 times 15, that's 300. And then 30 times 10, cross multiply, that's also 300. So we can say that those two are equal. We knew they are because it had an equal sign, but those are proportional. All right, let's try some problems. How to use proportions to solve math problems. All right, here's the first one. Oatmeal recipe calls for 2 cups of flour for every 3 cups of oatmeal. How much flour is needed to make a big batch of cookies that uses 9 cups of oatmeal? Now, there's a couple ways to set this up, but I want to make a proportion just like we had on the other side. So if I have 2 cups of flour for every 3 cups of oatmeal, I want to start with that. Those two go together, and I want to write that ratio. So 2 cups now the key here is to label it. Take a second and write down, so you label it so you know what the 2 represents. 2 flour, 3 oatmeal. Now I want to set up my proportion. So now I'm going to set up the same thing I know over here. I know one more. I know 9 cups of oatmeal. So you got to be careful where you put it. You got to match it up on the same level. If I have oatmeal here, you got to have oatmeal here. Okay, that's really important. That's where kids mess up. And then I'm looking for 2 cups of flour right here. So now I want to be able to solve it. And I'm going to use the cross products like I showed you on the original problem on the page before. I want to cross multiply, because if I do that, I know if I cross multiply, they're equal. So let's set that up. So 9 times 2, that's 18. Put it over here. 18. That's ugly. 9 times 2, 18. And that equals 3 times x. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to write 3 times x. Now, quickly, you want to divide both sides by 3, because if you're multiplying, you got to divide it to solve it. And that's going to be 6 equals x. 6 what? Well, 6 cups of what? 6 cups of flour. All right, so label it. Make sure you label your answer, and you got it. All right. Now in class, we'll talk about there's other ways to set these up. You just got to make sure if you have flour here, you got flour here. Oatmeal, oatmeal. Now, could I put the 3 on the top and the 9 on the top and put the 2 on the bottom? Sure. Just make sure they match up across from each other. All right, one more example. Josh spent the Saturday raking leaves. It took him 30 minutes to rake 5 piles of leaves. Okay, how long, if he continues at this rate, keeps it going, how many piles would he be able to rake in 4 hours? Now there's a curveball here. Just don't say 30 over 5, blank over, just, you got to be careful because the labels are a little different. So I'm going to set this up. Which 2 go together? These 2 match up. 30 minutes, and I'm going to have 5 piles. Now I got to match this up. So be careful. Where does 4 hours go? Well, it matches up with my time here. But this is hours, and this is minutes. So you say, well, I know that. I can multiply that by 60. I get 240 minutes. There you go. So that has to go right here. 240 minutes. And I want to know, okay, how many piles is that going to be? So I want to put an X. Now, use our cross products. Take 5 times 240, and I want to set that equal to X times 30. So 5 times 240. So you got a 0, 20, carry my 2, I got 10, I got 1200. And that's going to equal X times 30. All right, again, divide both sides by 30 to solve it. And look quick, I could take out those zeros, so I really have 120 divided by 3. Well, 3 goes into 12.4 and I have a 0. So I'm going to have 40. That's going to equal to my X. So about 40 piles of leaves. Okay, there you go. Now, could I set this up with hours instead of doing 30 minutes? Because could I put half an hour? So if I have hours and then 5 piles, is that the same? Can I put my 4 here? Yes, you can. Just so they match up, you guys. Okay, I got the phrase, apples, apples, oranges, oranges. I use a lot. Well, just make sure you got hours, hours, or apples, apples, and then piles, piles. Or if you do whatever it deals with, make sure they match up. That's so important. Write that in your WSQs. Make sure they match up. The top is the same label and the bottom is the same label. All right. If you got any questions, bring them. Do your practice. Okay, it's a pretty easy concept.